The CD attorneys, their job, what you're paying them to do is to make it look, when they do their pleadings and they do their reports and all the stuff, their job is to make it look that building's going to fall down tomorrow.
So you get as much money as possible.
And as an insurance agent, our job's like the exact opposite, is to make the building look as great as it possibly can be, right?
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Policy Party. I'm Negar Sharifi, joined by my partner, Phil Masi. In today's episode, we're going to discuss a topic that not many people talk about in the insurance industry, and that's construction defect lawsuits. One would think, what does that have anything to do with association insurance? But au contraire, it has quite the impact on your property renewal. So Phil, this comes up for me quite a bit because, as you know, you and I work with a lot of developers, home builders, and then a few years after they leave, board takes over, and sometimes they discover construction defect issues with the way their buildings were constructed. And then typically what happens is a construction defect lawsuit ensues. And I thought today it would be helpful to spend a few minutes to talk about how, when a board decides to pursue construction defect litigation against their developer, how that impacts the current and future property insurance renewals. So what I would like for you to start us off with is, are there as many property insurance options to choose from when a client starts CD litigation?
Yeah, so I can start there. So what people don't realize when they're going through the process of, do we file a CD claim, do we not? We're not here to tell them not to. They got to talk to their attorneys, look at the engineer reports. I mean, if there's significant construction defect issues in your buildings, I think you have to do it. So I don't know
this
how as a board.
episode is not about whether to file,
I
not
don't know
file.
that a board would say not to. Now, if there wasn't that much, or it was minor stuff, or whatever, they give more of an issue. But if there was significant things you come across and the cost of that is in the multi-millions, it's one of those things where you probably have to do that. But I think understanding what the impacts of the insurance program are important, because I don't know if, when they're going through it with the attorneys and talking about all the positives and negatives, that the insurance impact ever comes up. So I think that's what the best thing about this is. I don't think it does. Yeah. So what I would say is, what people need to realize is, put yourself in the shoe of the insurance carrier. So the insurance carrier's shoes, they're looking at you as, all right, we want to insure this risk. And if we're insuring this risk, how can the construction defects that are in place at this risk be negative for the insurance company? And how that can happen is a few different ways, right? So they think that the defect in the building could create a loss that would be larger than the loss would have been had the building not had that defect. So that can make sense, right? You could have I guess just kind of walking through.
So for example, if one of the items in the defect claim is stucco was not applied correctly to the building.
Yeah. And so I think that's the big thing. You're hitting the nail on the head, is what is the defect? Because then I think there's a big range between, hey, our parking lot's not graded
drainage.
Right, and drainage is a problem, which is a common defect.
Yeah.
Or, hey, there was no firewalls put into the building. So there's literally no firewalls. Like, I had that happen on several times. I've seen firewalls be an issue. They were constructed without the proper or any firewall. That's problematic for a fire claim, because the fire is going to start in a unit and not spread or not spread at the same rate if there's a proper firewall. If there's not a proper firewall, you're dealing with a larger loss. You're dealing with potentially liability issues you didn't have before. So I get why that could happen. Same thing with roof straps. Oh, we forgot to put the strapping on the roofs. Well, it's a brand new roof, but it just flies off when a storm comes, or the nails weren't put right on the shingles. So you can have all different types of issues that are more severe than, okay, there's some water intrusion here, or there's some stucco stuff. So really kind of depends what the degree of the issues are.
So for today's purpose, when we're discussing construction defect and its impact on the property insurance policy, we are discussing when the defects are related to the building envelope.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah. So if it's like again, parking lots and stuff like that, not as big of a deal. But when it's the building envelope, which is what the majority of them are, the carrier looks at it like, hey, this building is less than. So it's not as good of a risk as a building that doesn't have the construction defects, or had the defects and they've been cured, right? They've been fixed and
like can't withstand a hurricane or a storm.
Like certain wind, rain and stuff's going to cause more damage to that building than it otherwise would. So that's what the carrier looks like. The carrier is also worried, and we've seen this from several of our markets, that at the time of loss, they're going to get stuck having to pay to bring the building up to whether it's a code issue or it's the defect's bad enough that they've got to fix it. In my experience, I've not really seen that. I think it's an overblown worry, but it is a worry out there. So again, the carrier looks at it like, well, this is something that's going to make this building tougher to insure. So some carriers either A, don't want to touch anything with construction defects, or B, if they do, they don't want to give the best of the deductibles and terms that they otherwise would. Now, if you don't believe me, just look at your supplemental applications. All the supplemental applications for most of the markets that we insure with.
Most of the admitted carriers.
Yeah. Well, a lot of them are going to ask that question, right? So they're going to ask, are there any existing defects? Is there any latent defects? Is there any, whatever stuff is in there, that wording is the board, whether you know it or not, is saying no and signing that. If you know that that's not true, that there are issues, and you're now signing this supplemental application saying there isn't, if we fast forward 9 months down the line, there's some sort of loss and it comes out about the defects, does that like a material misrepresentation, or is it something where they can say they shouldn't have written or wouldn't have written that policy? I think it brings in a lot of other issues. So what I see agents that we compete against, a lot of times they don't bring this issue up. They don't
even ask.
Well, they just assume there's none.
Yeah.
Because I think if you just assume there's none and you just put it through as no, it's always going to be easier to get the quote. It's always going to be a better quote. But what risk is there that, in that situation? And so, there's a lot of ways this comes up. And remember, construction defects aren't something the board is talking about in secret. I mean, these things are littered throughout your board minutes. You've got attorneys involved. You have legal, a lot of stuff's being put out there and going to court on that. It's not going to be hard to find. And what we've actually seen some carriers do is they're looking for the court cases and they're pulling that stuff up in order to be like, hey, listen, this place had really bad construction defects. Even if there's proof they're repair, we don't want to write it. I mean, it's been some crazy ones depending on how bad the suits have gotten. So I guess what I would just tell our clients is that, the construction defect stuff, it's fine to move forward and do that stuff with proper counsel and guidance. Just understand that there is an impact to the insurance program. The good thing right now is the insurance market is so much better in Florida than it was several years ago, that the impact, even if it's somewhat more expensive with higher deductibles and things like that, it is nothing compared to how bad it would have been several years ago under those same set of circumstances.
So, well, thank you, Phil. But really the takeaway here for our clients that are listening is, one, if you're about to go through construction defect litigation, or considering it, or you've started it, it is imperative that you let us know as your insurance agent so that when we go to shop your renewal, we are notifying the marketplace.
And what I will add, because I think this is a good point to mention. So the CD attorneys, their job, what you're paying them to do is to make it look, when they do their pleadings and they do their reports and all the stuff, their job is to make it look that building is going to fall down tomorrow.
So you get as much money as possible.
And as an insurance agent, our job's like the exact opposite, is to make the building look as great as it possibly can be, right? So those things are at odds of one another.
Yes.
And I personally don't want to be the agent that's in there that jeopardizes your claim process because I'm saying something's not a big deal, right? Because that's the other thing.
Very good point.
I mean, you don't want me to be like, don't worry about that. They're just saying that. And then what is the attorney for the developer gets a hold of it, right? So there's just a lot there that you have to think about. And I think this is one of those higher level insurance things to navigate that someone with experience has been doing it a long time. It's been in front of it. There's plenty of people out there that don't know couldn't tell you what defects are.
We also know, how to negotiate with the underwriters to maybe, if we see an opportunity to get them to write the account, even though you have CD, maybe sometimes we can get that worked out. Lastly, before we go, it is important that they understand that just because the construction litigation has been closed out and settled, the carriers don't really open up until all the repairs are made. Correct? So it's not just about the claim, there's been a settlement, you've received several $1 million.
It's the unrepaired defects that are the issue.
Defects,
so
yes.
It's like once they're repaired. And again, during the process, you might do temporary repairs. That's all good information for us to have as well. But they really want to see those things finally cured. And you want to keep reports of all those repairs, everything you fixed. I mean, all that stuff's going to be really important to have in the file.
So this is a very little discussed topic with huge impacts on insurance that we wanted to make sure you were aware of. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Policy Party. I'm Negar Sharifi, and he's Phil Masi.